Welcome to Anti-Fiction. This is a weekly nonfiction podcast where each week I, Christian Yates, invite two guest hosts to come and talk about stories related to a specific topic. My guest hosts this week are self-proclaimed sexiest grandparent, Deeberdine.
Thank you very much. I appreciate being here.
And self-proclaimed sexiest cat parent, Andy Mattingly.
Oh, I thought you were going to say like grandpa or something. I was going to be like, yup.
No, because you're not a grandpa.
Well,
But you are a cat parent.
I could be a grandpa.
To the worst podcast mascot cat of all time.
No.
He is not.
Look, he's right here. He heard you say that.
You'll pay later.
Probably, yeah, absolutely. So our topic today is disappearances. Ooh.
Me and Dee are leaving. Bye.
That's the disappearance. I do this episode alone. So we've all picked stories about people who disappeared or were never heard from again or were heard from a long time later or something like that. Mine is very local. And by very local, I mean it takes place literally like 5 minutes away from where we're recording right now.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Ooh, is it a haunted disappearance?
It's
Are we doing
not.
post-show bullshit at the site of the disappearance?
We should.
No.
we should, but the family probably still lives there.
Oh, no.
So I don't want to be.
Listen, ma'am, I know you've never heard of this podcast, but we're kind of a big deal, and
Is it okay if we sit in your front yard for a while?
that's
and
it.
talk
We're
about
just
it?
and we're gonna take
I'm just-
pictures.
We're gonna
and
set up a card table and some
Right.
lawn chairs. It's gonna be great. Have a
Some
few
sound
brewskis.
equipment.
It's gonna be good. So my story is the disappearance of Erica Baker. Yes.
Oh no,
If,
I'm not from here, so I don't know this.
If
But
you're
everybody
from
else
the
looked
area,
grim.
then you have just inhaled sharply like Dee just did.
Yeah.
If you're not, strap in
Oh no.
because this is
Many
this is gonna
twists
be
and turns.
yeah.
Oh no.
For sure.
Okay, first of all, I want to say I'm sorry to the parents that I joked about camping in your front yard.
So February 7th, 1999, at about 3 in the morning, or I'm sorry, 3 in the afternoon, on a rainy day, 9-year-old Erica Baker left her house to walk her dog. A couple who was walking their dog around the pond area of the Kettering Rec Center had seen her leaving the pond area at about 3:45. A short time later, they found Erica's dog shivering and wet in the doorway of the nearby middle school, but Erica Baker was never seen again.
Oh no.
Yes. So, that same afternoon, Christian Gabriel, Clifford Butts, and Jan Franks. I know you want to laugh at that, but
She's trying.
listen, it's a funny name. It is. So those three, Christian Gabriel, Clifford Butts, and Jan Franks, were robbing the Kettering Mire.
Oh, I don't feel bad for laughing
Yeah.
if they're robbers.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That
you know.
guy's name is silly as shit.
Yeah.
Get it? 'Cause it's
That's going to
butts.
be, by the way, that's the last time he pops up in this story, and I don't know what has happened to him. So that's the disappearance. That's it. That's the end of my story. So the three of them are robbing the Kettering Mire. When Gabriel was questioned about it in connection with Erica's disappearance, he had indicated that something could have happened on the way back to his Dayton residence. The van in question had been sold a few weeks after the Mire robbery and after Erica's disappearance, and had subsequently been impounded by Dayton police. So they already had the van in their custody.
That was lucky.
Right? It was put through forensic testing, but there was no evidence linking Erica to the van. And I mean, this was 1999, so
Right.
like, it's not like forensic testing was like
Where it is
great.
now. Yeah.
It's nowhere near where it is
Right.
now, but it's still. I mean, it's been around for 10 years or
Oh,
so
yeah.
at that point. So they find no evidence that could link Erica to the van. No hair, no blood, nothing. But police had no further contact with Gabriel until 2004. In July of 2004, Gabriel was arrested for receiving stolen property.
That sounds like Gabriel.
Right? Yeah, classic
Classic.
Christian Gabriel. So he's arrested for this completely unrelated thing, and like they're bringing him in, and he's outside smoking a cigarette before they book him, and he mentions that he had been a passenger in the van that struck Erica Baker. The driver of the van, he said, had been Jan Franks, who was with him while they were robbing the Meyer.
Okay.
Franks had died of a drug overdose in 2001, 3 years prior. Gabriel had said that when the van hit Erica, the others put her body in the van, then drove back to his place to smoke crack before driving to Huffman Dam, where the others buried her. He said he wanted to take her to the hospital, but the others were like, fuck that. No, we're not.
Well, of course he's saying that. Now.
Right. Note that he also said he was a passenger and Franks was driving.
Oh, right.
That's going to be important.
Somebody who died was driving, so you can't even verify it.
So he accompanied officers to Huffman Dam to search for Erica's body, but after an entire day of searching, her body was not found. He could not pinpoint the location. Now, to be fair, if he was present at Huffman Dam after the others were burying her body, they were all high on crack.
Yeah.
Like, they had all just smoked crack.
Right.
And then...
Which I hear is an experience, so probably you forget stuff.
Right.
Well, and years ago, and they've been still smoking crack probably all these
Yeah.
years, so their brains are pretty fried.
Right.
Right. And so I don't know if I mentioned it earlier, but when he was questioned about, I don't know if it was when he was questioned initially about the robbery at the Meyer, because they, I guess, couldn't, even though he wasn't arrested then, but like, yeah, no, we were robbing the Meyer. I didn't see anything. I don't know. So
What?
Right. But he said that like they were all also drunk at the time. They had been drinking, and they had a little buzz.
Okay.
They robbed the Meyer. They drove away. They were a little buzzed. So that was July of 2004. He said that he was a passenger in the van, and they couldn't find Erica, even though he said, yeah, we took her here and buried her. December of that year, December 10th, Gabriel contacted police and confessed that he had been the driver when the van struck Erica.
Oh my God.
Yes. So he had contacted them on December 10th, and it took like 3 days to get to this confession.
Wow.
But Franks had directed him to a park where they buried Erica's body. So he was driving, they hit Erica, and then Franks said, okay, we gotta take care of this. So like drive over here. So on December 21st and 22nd, he demonstrated the route that they had taken that day, trying to find the gravesite. He also described how he buried Erica at Caesar's Creek. Here's the thing. If you're not from the greater Dayton area, you may not be familiar with any of the places that I'm describing to you. I have been to all of these places. Caesar's Creek is a 15-mile drive, or it's 15 miles away from where Erica was last seen.
Right.
So if you're robbing a grocery store, you're going to take a windy drive. That's the first thing. If you're robbing a place, you're going to take a windy drive. This was a very windy drive. I looked at it on Google Maps. I'm like, this doesn't make any damn sense. Why they would, if you're trying to get to where they were trying to get to, why would you take this route? It's so out of the way. Why would you take like residential streets?
Right.
With a body in the car.
Just get on the highway. Get right on the highway.
Yeah.
The Meyer that they were robbing is right next to the highway. So to say that they buried her body at Caesar's Creek doesn't make sense either, because that's all the way out in Waynesville. Like, it's 15 miles.
Yeah.
In the opposite direction. So her body was still not recovered. Even though, like, they looked at Caesar's Creek, they tried to retrace the steps of the route. And I mean, he could be like, well, we were buzzed. It was, I was intoxicated. I've been intoxicated ever since.
Right.
And I have no idea where we buried it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know where the body is. But police indicted Gabriel in February of 2005. the only things they could actually charge him with were tampering with evidence
Yeah.
and gross abuse of a corpse.
Right.
Shit.
Even though they didn't have the corpse.
Yeah.
Because he
Correct.
confessed to it.
Correct.
Right.
All they could, because it's
Right.
circumstantial,
Right.
but they have his testimony to go on for these charges, but they can't charge him with manslaughter or murder or anything because there's no actual evidence that Erica's dead. But they indicted him on those charges 3 days before the statute of limitations would have run out.
Oh, God. Oof.
He was convicted in October of 2005 and served nearly 6 years, being released on June 23rd, 2011.
Oh, my God. 6 years.
6
Yeah.
years. Yes. Pam Schmidt, Erica's grandmother, picked him up from jail when he was released.
Oh, my gosh.
She said, quote, "I always hoped if I could talk to him personally, from a grandparent's viewpoint, we could find her and bring her home and bury her. We still haven't found Erica, so you know that didn't work out. But I felt that I owed it to Erica to try. I feel like I let everyone down because he didn't tell me everything I wanted to know." So, here's the thing. I don't know how much of his story is true. Because, like, one member of the family, I think it was actually Pam Schmidt, had also said, how many drugs do you have to do that you don't stop to help a child? And I'm like, how many drugs do you have to do to go through a traumatic event like hitting a child and then not remember any of the subsequent events?
Right.
Right.
So something about his story, either he knows exactly where she's at and he's not going to say a damn thing because it's going to lead to more charges. They can actually charge him with manslaughter or with murder.
Because he hasn't been charged with that
Correct.
at this point in time.
They could
Right.
still get him for it.
Even though the statute of limit, because it could be murder at that point in time, or
Correct.
or
Because if she was not dead
Right.
when they hit her,
right,
it would be murder.
right.
Otherwise, it's vehicular manslaughter,
Vehicular
which I don't
manslaughter,
know
yeah.
that the statute of limitations runs out on that either,
I don't know.
because it's still a death charge.
Right.
So, who knows? There are a lot of inconsistencies in his story, and obviously he's not going to say anymore. He obviously wanted, because he contacted police, I feel like, wanted somebody to have paid for the crime, whether or not he was the driver, whether or not the first part of his story about wanting to take her to the hospital was true. Clearly, he wanted someone to be held responsible for that, so he takes the fall. Or he actually did do it and then only pled to the lesser of the charges,
I don't know. That's a tough one.
right? So, here's another kink in the story. In 2013, a Rutgers University student contacted the Baker family, contacted them directly, and claimed that Erica was now a college student in New Jersey. They did not contact investigators, they contacted the family. Yeah, right? Okay. Bob Green, who was one of the detectives on Erica's case, interviewed the woman in question, who was of Cuban descent. The whole family is white. And concluded that this was not Erica Baker. Pam Schmidt, again, her grandmother, had said that she knew immediately this was not her granddaughter, but there was still the hope that we could have that miracle like Elizabeth Smart, who, if you're not familiar, was a girl who went missing and then was later actually found and was able to be reunited with her family. So it wasn't Erica, but that little hiccup, like the Bob Green had said, in 2005, like the Baker family had closure on this,
Right.
and then here comes somebody who's claiming that they have some information when they have absolutely no idea what's going on, really. Like,
I mean, that's really
So
fucking
why?
sick. That's some like
right? Even
Golden
if you,
State Killer shit where he would keep calling his victims afterwards
yes.
just to
Yes.
that's what they were doing.
Well, and even if you genuinely believed that you knew who this person was, that she was this missing girl, why would you contact the family?
No,
Contact
like,
the
for sure you
investigator.
wouldn't.
Correct.
They absolutely
call
were doing
the
because they're like
police
a
department
psychopath or something.
and say, I think
Attention
and
seeking.
yeah.
either that or they really thought they were doing a good thing. Like, I'm going to reunite a family today, right?
And that's
Even
always
then,
a
like,
possibility with
then the best case scenario is good intentions with poor
Correct.
execution. That's
Correct.
the best scenario
Correct.
for that.
All right. Well, good intentions gets you punched in the face, especially if you contact a family. Like, who was this person? For sure, I'm gonna hit them.
Just some Rutgers student.
All right. Well, I'm gonna have to hit
Yeah.
every Rutgers
I
student.
guess, like,
until I
you know,
find this dude.
Andy
I don't know if the young lady in question, her name maybe was Erica Baker, but like that's such a common-ish name that
Both of those names are pretty common.
I'm sure that if you pulled out a phone book, you're gonna find like 800.
Have you ever done
Erica
that
Bakers.
website where you like put in your name and it tells you how many people living have your name in the United States?
No.
I've
Oh,
not.
it's interesting. It's super interesting because there's like 13 million people with my last name, and then there's like far more with my first name, and then then you put it together, and then they're like, and then it drops off a lot, of course,
Right.
because the odds of them having the same combination. But you can do like first, middle, and last, and
Oh.
then it'll tell you how many people have your same name.
I would highly doubt that there are that many people who have my name.
Well, yeah, yours is far more interesting. Mine's very generic.
So, but yeah. Anyway, that's kind of the story. It's police are pretty sure that Gabriel has more information about it, specifically where her body was buried.
There were so many
But
ideas and where she might have been.
yeah, like a lot of
They checked
speculation.
downtown. Lots of speculation. She was dumped at one of the old buildings that has now been torn down years and years ago. But it was a huge
Yeah.
story, and everyone knew that there was just so much more to it than.
Right.
I mean, the family was, I believe, even suspect at one time.
And I think in cases like
yes,
that, it
they
always,
Always, yeah.
always, because especially in light of like this
A
was
little
3 years
girl.
after the John Bonet case.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So
But I remember the story, and it was a big one, and it's
Wow.
still they just had a review of it not too long ago. Because it's how many years? 1999.
yeah,
Almost 20 years,
19
yeah.
years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and she still hasn't been found. So.
Jesus.
But the family and police they're still looking for any information
Right.
about it. So, Christian Gabriel, if you're listening,
Or anyone else.
or anyone else who might have any,
Correct.
and again, contact the investigators first.
Yes. All
And if
kidding
you're that,
aside.
and
Call-
if you're that student, you contact me directly. So I just want to talk to you.
Right? Let me tell you a thing or two.
I wouldn't if I were you.
But yeah, they're still actively pursuing leads. They're fairly confident at this point. They said that probably Erica is dead.
Oh yes.
There's
Yes.
very little chance that she wouldn't be, especially after all these years,
Right.
because she herself would have come forward. She would have
Right.
been like 28 at this point.
Yeah.
Like,
And she was very precocious.
mm-hmm.
She wasn't just some little shy
Yeah.
8-year-old or whatever. How 8-year-old?
9.
9
She
year
was
old.
9.
Yeah. She was not that way. She was a very outgoing child, and she would not
Yep.
have stood for it if she had an opportunity
Right.
to.
Right.
So,
Mm-hmm.
more than likely, unfortunately.
So, yeah, that's the story of Erica Baker. Again, if you have any information or possible leads or anything, contact Dayton Police.
Absolutely.
Contact Dayton Police. Don't contact the Baker family. Rutgers student.
Coming for you.
So anyway, that's going to lead us over to Dee's story.
Well, mine is a little different than Christian's.
Hopefully a little more lighthearted.
Well, maybe a little weirder.
Okay, all right.
If weird,
We'll take weirder.
Weird is a little. These are actually.
There's very few jokes you can make during a story
I
like
know,
what I
and
just
I'm
did.
thinking, oh, I'm supposed to
So.
be funny, but I'm not. going
No,
to be
yeah,
funny
no,
with
that
this. Yeah.
that's not a particular scenario. You can
No,
make
it
fun of Clifford Butt's name, but that's about
and
it.
That's
it.
about it. And I'm not sure you can really make fun of some of these, but I think it does leave some speculation open.
Okay.
So, have you guys ever been camping or hiking or fishing?
We went
Yes.
camping last month.
Oh, for my birthday.
Yeah.
It was really fun.
Did you like it?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you might want to rethink.
Oh, good.
no.
Oh boy, here we go. Okay, I'm glad
Because-
we're doing this after we went camping.
Yeah, there are evidently a lot of disappearances from national parks and state parks all around the United States.
Okay.
That
and
makes
in other
sense.
countries as well. Part of them can be, of course, because it's a wilderness area.
Right.
Right.
There's mountains and there's valleys and there's areas where there are animals that will definitely eat you.
Right.
And so some of those disappearances,
Or maybe it's like 127 hours with James
Correct.
Franco.
Correct,
You get
something
stuck
like
between
that.
a rock and a hard place.
Absolutely.
You have to cut your own arm off. Oh, spoilers for 127 hours.
But there are a very large number every year of disappearances, which we don't hear about. And so I found a bunch of stories, and I read a lot of stories about it, but I picked 3 in particular because they're a little bit different. The first one that I want to tell you about is actually a disappearance and then a reappearance.
Okay.
It happened in 2010 in the Mount Shasta area.
Is it a magician, first of all?
Yes,
Because
it
if it's
is.
a disappearance and then
It's a-
reappearance.
Oh, I believed you. I was like, nice. Damn it.
Stop it. Anyway, this actual disappearance was highlighted. If you've ever heard of George Knapp's Coast to Coast, he's an
not.
investigative journalist,
Okay.
and he is an award-winning journalist. He's won the Peabody Award and the Edward Murrow Award and everything.
Okay.
But he talked about it, and like I said, it was in 2010. And a 3-year-old young boy who they just decided to call John Doe.
Okay.
He was last seen with his parents near a little river area, throwing stones and everything into it.
Mm-hmm.
And
As you do when you're
3.
a kid,
Correct.
you know,
Correct.
or my age.
That's what rivers are for, right?
Yeah.
Just chucking rocks into it. Do they do anything else?
He disappeared for 5 hours. Basically, the
Oh.
parents turned around and he was gone.
Ooh.
Oh, God, kids do that so much.
And
Ugh.
of course, they immediately searched the entire
Right.
area.
Right.
Then they called in the search and rescue.
Right.
So all of a sudden, 5 hours later, here is this little boy, dazed and upset, in the middle of a grove of trees.
Okay.
Not that close to where he'd been with his family.
Mm-hmm.
When he was asked what happened, now
Yeah.
remember, this is a 3-year-old
Yeah.
Yeah.
child. He said that a tall woman who looked like his grandmother
Okay.
took him to a place that ended up being a room that had robot-like creatures in it that weren't moving,
Okay.
and there were also many weapons.
What?
And he said large spiders. This is from this little kid.
Right.
He noticed a strange glow coming from the head of the woman, and then he thought that maybe she might have been a robot too. She still looked like his grandmother.
Okay.
Okay, so she had him. Okay, he was laying on the floor and everything, and she was taking care of him, but she started getting angry with him for some reason, and she finally this is really weird, had him put down a piece of paper, and she wanted him to defecate on it.
Well, okay.
Oh.
All right. Yeah, why not?
Well,
So welcome to Aliens Volume 2, I guess.
Exactly.
Oh, no.
Well, it gets better. He said he didn't want to, he didn't have to, and so she got angry, and she told him to go stand in these trees and wait till somebody found him. Well, they did. Now, it could have been an active imagination, but I don't know too many 3-year-olds who could make up the kind of story that this child did.
That child better grow up to be the next Stephen King, I'll tell you that much.
Well, the second half of
man.
the story, which makes
Oh,
it
there's
even a
more.
little bit more bizarre, was the year before this
Okay.
actually happened. His grandmother, his real
Yeah.
grandmother, and grandfather were camping in the same area.
No.
Okay.
She said she thought she had a dream where she had been dragged out of her tent at night. And then when she woke up the next morning, the back of her neck was so sore and painful. And when she took her hand down, there was blood on the back of her hand. They discovered 2 puncture marks in the back of her neck. Now, they have absolutely stuck with this story throughout this whole time.
Right.
No explanation of what actually happened to the little boy has ever been discovered.
Holy shit.
I know.
Wait, what did you say? What park that was?
Mount Shasta area, which if you know anything about Mount Shasta, the Native Americans, that was a sacred mountain to them. But a lot of weird stuff goes.
Right.
Yes, it does. Look up some of the stories. Anyway,
That's
I know.
fucking crazy.
So there was like a split second there where you talked about the kid going missing. I was like, I don't think I can do another one. But then I remember you said and reappearance, and I was like, oh, yeah.
Exactly.
I was
Ugh.
honestly like that got way weirder than I was expecting. Like, well, yeah, but then he came back, later, and he was wearing like a fox skin with a little fox head hood, and
Man, I'm so glad it was aliens.
and they said,
Well.
"Kid, where did you go?" And he said, "I have conquered the wilderness," or something like that's.
Exactly. He was a new little Davy
That's as
Crockett.
crazy
Yeah.
as I was prepared
Exactly.
Oh, I'm so happy it was aliens.
Well, I don't know what it was. They
It
never
was
said
aliens.
it was
for. A
anything like
lot
that.
of peyote is
Well,
what that was.
a 3-year-old boy needs to get off of it. Then that's
Yeah.
kind of sad.
That's
Anyway, I have to say something about his parents if that's true.
Yeah.
But no, so that was the first one.
Okay.
This one occurred, the next one occurred in 1938. This is another child.
Okay.
4-year-old Alfred Bielhotz was vacationing with his family in Colorado Rocky Mountain Park.
Okay.
The family was hiking. A few feet away from the family, without warning, he just was gone. Basically,
Same
was-
as the first one, basically just
was just gone.
blink and you miss him.
A 6-mile search area showed nothing.
What? 6 miles.
6 miles in this whole area they went and could not find a trace of this child. However, they did send in search dogs, and they were able to trace his scent 500 feet uphill from where he vanished. Yet there were no footprints.
None at
found
all.
At all. Stranger than that, the dogs seemed confused by what they were smelling, and they quickly lost the scent.
Was he
Oh, man.
picked up by a giant eagle or
Well,
something?
The dogs then traced the scent uphill. They got it again, but they began to cock their heads and showed extreme nervousness, and finally they would go no further. They laid down on the ground and were unable or unwilling to go further up the trail.
Oh, my gosh.
Also, at this same time, 6 miles away, 2 hikers claimed that they saw a young boy on a very dangerous outcropping of rock called the Devil's Nest.
Okay.
Ooh, I know. They only saw him minutes after he had allegedly disappeared from his family, and he seemed dazed and upset, then appeared to be jerked back by an unknown, unseen force.
Oh, my
Holy
gosh.
shit. God damn. More aliens.
4-year-olds unlikely would travel 6 miles uphill over 300 feet, in
Yeah.
Right.
elevation. So what happened? He's
Oh.
never been found, and to
Oh my
this day,
Shit.
his case is still one of the most unexplained and disturbing disappearances that national parks have on record.
Oh, my God.
But he was jerked back away from the ledge, correct?
Yes, but disappeared.
But then,
Nobody saw what jerked him back away from the edge, and he was
Shit.
never found again.
All right.
So at the same time, now this is not in the stories, but reading the research that I've found, there have been many cases of wolf-like creatures
Okay.
and bear-like creatures. Not saying wolves or
Or
bears,
bears.
bear-like and
but
wolf-like.
similar.
And
But
some of the
invisible
stories,
ones.
no, some of the disappearances and reappearances, because a lot of them are children or young people, 18
Yeah.
years old and stuff,
Right.
and they all tell the same story of being protected or held or kept warm or safe by these creatures. Now,
Wow.
I'm not saying Sasquatch or anything like, but
Right.
something, that many different stories, that many different instances, and it's all the same kind of stuff.
Right.
So, anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy.
You picked some fucking weird ones.
I know. Well, there's so many.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of frightening when you go in and look up national park disappearances,
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
because sometimes what's been even more interesting is how the National Park Service has handled it. You can only search for so long.
Right.
You don't have the manpower, the resources to continue. But there have been several instances where the National Park Service has just shut down the search almost immediately with no reason.
Oh my God.
And some people, of course, conspiracy theorists think that there's something else to it. But
Right.
there's a lot of stuff out there. We don't know what's going on.
No. We're calling off the search to not anger the mountain gods.
Yeah, exactly.
We will be discontinuing immediately. Please make a perimeter around the forest, please.
My last story is actually just 3 small ones because this is all the information I could find on them. This was in the Great Smoky Mountains, which are an older mountain range, of course, and a lot more history there. This is 1969. 6-year-old Dennis Martin and his brother and 2 other boys were scheming to scare their family. When the boys jumped out, Dennis was not to be found and was never seen again.
Fucking mountain gods.
Okay, 1976, a girl she's 16 years old, named Trini Lynn, along with 40 classmates, were hiking.
Okay.
No one saw her after 3 p.m. Searched for months and never ever found.
Oh my gosh.
Jesus.
Last one, 1981, 58-year-old
These
Thelma,
are all in the Smoky Mountains?
Yes, these are 3 in the Great Smoky Mountains. 58-year-old Thelma Pauline Melton was hiking in an area that she was completely familiar with. She had hiked in this area for years and years and years with her friends. When she walked ahead of them and went up over a small rise, they got to the other side. She was gone. She was not found. She was not back at the campsite. You're talking a matter of a minute and a half, and she was gone.
Oh my God.
Shit.
I know. Pretty weird, huh?
That's super weird.
The other thing, when I mentioned the 3 o'clock time period, it has been found that a lot of these occurrences have happened between 2:30 and 6:30.
What's the sacred hour of the mountain
Well,
gods?
evidently is happy hour for the mountain gods.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what's going on. But anyway, so that's what I have.
Shit.
Is
And,
wild.
Those
It's
were-
aliens.
Those
I
were
know.
fucking weird. That's good.
Well, I'm glad you liked them.
Yeah.
Like I said, you might want to rethink going into the mountains
Hell
and
yeah.
into any of the parks.
Especially, just stay indoors at 3 p.m.
Well, the bottom line is never go hiking or camping or fishing by yourself
Alone,
anyway.
for sure. Yeah.
Shit with the 40 classmates.
Well, I know, which makes it really weird.
If you're going to go out into the woods,
41 other people.
41 other people. That's the magic number.
Yeah, not just 40.
Yeah.
Because if you're the 39th person or the 40th, you're SOL.
Yeah.
That's
You're
it for
SOL.
you.
Anyway,
Holy
so
shit.
that's what I have.
That was awesome.
Thanks.
So, Andy, you got a
Alright.
weird one. And I know you
Alright.
got a weird one because a minute ago you told me what it was. And I am so excited about it.
All right, so this one's also up for a lot of speculation. Pretty controversial and relatively recent.
I remember, this was last November or something, right?
No, sorry.
Or
November
2016?
Yeah, November 2016.
Okay.
Ooh, sorry. It's about to play the 911 call. Let me turn my phone down. Okay. I don't know. How to work this.
911, we need emergency service here at the podcast.
Right. Okay. So
And it was during that episode that 3 podcasters disappeared
Disappeared.
right before their sound engineer's eyes.
Oh God, you know
And
why
we're
though? Because the whole time she was talking about that, I was thinking I'd be okay with aliens abducting me. I think that would be super neat.
Well, and I didn't want to.
I mean, these aliens specifically seemed pretty benevolent, like the ones from the first story.
Especially if I'm gonna be like, no, I'm not shitting on that paper, and then she's
I'd be
like,
like,
fine, go home.
Fine, go sit in the woods.
I
Sit in the
for-
woods if you're
well,
going to be that way.
And let me go back for just a quick minute because I forgot the most important part of that story. The woman who pretended or thought was his grandmother told him that he was from space and
Oh, buddy.
he had been planted in his mother's womb.
Oh my
And
God.
those were the words that he said. Now, what 3-year-old
Knows
is
those
going to
words?
say something like that? I have grandchildren, and my 3-year-olds are pretty darn smart, but I've never heard them talk like that before. So that kind of made me feel, yeah, maybe some alien stuff going on
Yeah.
there. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but when you said that,
I'm
I
all
went, oh my
about
God,
it.
I forgot the most
I
important part
forgot.
of the story.
So, how many aliens are involved in your story, Andy?
None.
Oh, well, that's fine. Tell it anyway.
All right. That's useless now.
No,
Okay.
I'm on the edge of my seat. I can hardly wait.
Okay, so November 6th. I'm so sorry. November 2nd, 2016. Mr. Keith Papini, who was a bombing last name, got home from work, I guess, and realized that his wife wasn't home. So usually she would have been home by then. So he waits a little while. Maybe she's running errands. She is a regular jogger, that sort of thing. And so he gives her a little time, but she never returns home. So he doesn't call the police right away. They both have iPhones, and so he uses the Find My iPhone function, which if you've enabled it to another iPhone,
Right.
you can use GPS to find your iPhone. I don't know. So he uses that, gets the signal on her iPhone, and follows the GPS a mile before finding her cell phone and her earbuds that she used to jog sitting on the sidewalk at an intersection about a mile from their house.
Ooh.
Yeah. So that's when he calls the police, of course. So the news of her disappearance pretty quickly garners international attention, which is not surprising because she is thin, young, white, and blonde.
Oh.
Right.
So people care
That's
that
what
she's
news
missing.
loves.
People care, yeah.
Mother of two, which
I'm
is
screwed
just
if I ever
yeah.
disappear because nobody's going to look for me.
I'll look for you, Dee.
Well, thank you, Christian.
I'm not. I'll know it's aliens. They
Oh
heard
yeah,
us.
no, that's true.
They know
You've
we're
angered
onto
the
them.
mountain gods with your story.
So Sherri Papini is considered missing at that point. Getting that much attention, they were hoping that people would come forward. Somebody had seen her. They got nothing. Like nobody had seen her jogging. Just MIA. 22 days later, she was found walking on a highway 150 miles south of her house. Her arms were bound, and her okay, I've seen two different accounts of this. You're going to figure out pretty quickly that this story does not. There's a lot of
Really makes
inconsistencies
sense.
to her story. So in part of it, I saw
Was
that her
Christian Gabriel must have been involved.
must have been. Her arms were bound in one. Another one said that she had like a chain around her waist that her arms were bound to. It just seems a little iffy. The story is pretty inconsistent, and because later on people start doubting her story, a lot of rumors sort of start. Okay. So she's found walking. For sure, every story, her arms are bound. Other things, sometimes she's is still blindfolded. Sometimes,
Right.
whatever. She was known for having very long, beautiful blonde hair. It had been cut off. She was dirty and injured, physically bruises, mostly on her torso, and she had been branded on her shoulder. So the thing is, nobody can consistently say what was branded onto her, what it looks like. People will say that there are sort of accounts of her neighbors. At this point, she doesn't really leave her house anymore because of
All
because people,
publicity.
yeah,
Well, she's afraid
publicity.
of getting abducted again.
Well, I can't speak to that, I guess. But people sit outside of her house trying to get her to talk.
Right.
She's become pretty much a recluse. Her whole family has.
And she's never said what happened to her?
So she has.
Okay.
So when she was found, she told, let me switch my notes. She told officers that she had been abducted by 2 Hispanic females armed with 1 handgun. She never saw what they looked like because either she had something covering her head,
Okay.
or they would use scarves to cover her face. When she was found, she had, here's the specifics about her hair had been cut off. Her nose was broken. She had bruises on her arms and torso, and she had dropped weight to 87 pounds. So that was the extent of her injuries when she was found. So she went to the police right away, told them her story, that she had been abducted by these 2 Hispanic women.
I think I remember this story.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it got pretty
I
big.
followed it a little bit when it was breaking.
Okay.
Yeah. And that they said that they kept her chained up and tortured her for 22 days and then just let her go.
She didn't just let her go.
And
They
just
were
let her go.
Like, all right, we're done.
They never asked for like a ransom. They never contacted anybody, and they just we're done and let her go. So I don't want to sound like a weirdo, but I
think I know what you're thinking.
I feel like I just know a lot about true crime because I read this stuff.
Right.
And I listen to other people who are also weirdos and are maybe a little bit more, have like a little bit more authority than me to talk about it. But people who want to torture other people are usually sexual sadists.
Right.
And if they, first of all, they just don't let you go.
It's also typically not two women.
Right. Oh, yeah. So women are unlikely to go through with this.
A man and a woman, possibly.
Oh,
yes.
yes. Oh, that's been shown
For sure.
many times.
Partners in crime.
Yes.
It's unlikely that women are going to do it. And then it's also unlikely to attack people from a different race than you.
Yes.
Also true.
And they're probably going to kill you. They're not just going to let you go. And if they got away with it, right? They've never been caught. If they get away with it, they're going to do it again.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
It's a compulsion.
Right.
So this should have happened again if she got away. But she didn't escape. She said that they just dropped her off on the side of the road. So later on, police investigated. Of course, they did forensic investigations on her clothing, on her body. At like when she got taken to the hospital, they did all that, and there was nothing to prove that any women at all had been a part of it. But male DNA was found on her and her clothes that she neglected to talk about. She never accused, she never said a man was there. So that is when the public sort of turned against her,
right,
and decided that she was not being truthful about this. So I have...
She either lied or withheld details.
Yes. So that... Well, I am going to say, though... public opinion does not count for much for me.
Right.
So, public opinion switches so easily. But that was a... There are just a lot of inconsistencies... because she was found pretty quickly after she was released. So why, they were searching for the car that she told them to go look for and stuff like that. They never found it. They also found out later that she had been, she had gotten in trouble, with the law several times before this. One particular instance, she had gotten upset with her mother, injured herself, and then blamed the injuries on her mom to get her arrested. And then that, of course, did not go through. They figured it out pretty quickly.
I believe she still had to have some kind of an accomplice if she did
Oh,
this to
for
herself,
sure.
because
Yeah.
you can't do that to
Yeah,
yourself.
it's very hard to inflict the types of injuries
Correct.
that she had
Correct.
by yourself. It's also very hard, I feel like, to convincingly bind yourself.
Right.
No, I don't think so. People bind themselves a lot to commit suicide, so they don't instinctually, if you're going to hang
that is
yourself,
true.
you would bind your hands, so that way you don't, once you
Yeah,
start dying, you don't instinctively start, so you can bind yourself pretty
I
effectively.
suppose. That is true.
I've never tried, but
Right.
now I'll have to go home and try
Right.
it. Just to see if it can be done.
In other news.
What are you doing?
I
tonight,
just said
Dee?
that.
Oh.
I just said that that wasn't a weird thing to be, factually. I was like, if you don't believe me, I have
I
stuff to
know.
back this up. That.
No, that's not
I
weird
said
at all,
that.
Andy.
I mean, and I guess autoerotic asphyxiation is a thing, too. So it's like...
Yeah, but you wouldn't want to bind your hands for that because then you'll die. I think that's the point of that is you're not supposed to die, right? The only thing I know
Brings you
about
to
that
the
is from
brink.
BoJack
Yes, but-
Horseman, and that was a weird episode. So okay, so another inconsistency in her story was Sherri said that she, while trying to fight off one of her captors, cut her foot really badly, but the people in the hospital couldn't find.
Any evidence?
There was no
no
injury.
No cut.
There was no obvious injury, and then there was no scar indicating that there had been an injury that possibly healed. So
Unless it was healed with alien technology.
not everything's aliens.
Oh, come on.
So I'm going to read you a little bit from this Newsweek article where a man named Ken Ryan, who's a law enforcement expert, he's worked for 25 years in law enforcement and teaches criminology at California State University. I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about what he had to say about the case. So he says that he's amazed by the coincidences and thinks that the story is most likely false. At this point, the police don't have enough evidence to prove it false, and unless they can, they're of course going to treat it as a real case.
Right.
They're not going to.
They don't
Yeah.
really
Right,
have any
right.
choice.
Yeah, right. Of course, they're not going to be like.
Yeah, unless because your story is true until
Yes.
It's not.
until it's not.
This is a quote. I think it would be irresponsible to clear your hands of this and say it was a hoax without clearly laying out the details. So even though he thinks that it's most likely false,
Right.
It's also pretty standard to assume it's true until it can be proven false.
Well, especially because you don't want, like you said, you don't
Right.
want them to repeat it. If they're sexual sadists,
Yes.
Correct.
you
Yeah.
don't want a repeat. You want
Yeah,
to
you
try and
can't
lock
just
it down
forget
after
about it.
one
Yes.
attack.
Yeah. Is she
Okay.
still married?
Yes. So she and her husband are still married. They have 2 children. She and the children rarely leave the house. Her husband leaves for work, but they don't socialize. They've pretty much, as soon as
Well, that's real healthy, isn't it?
right.
Yeah.
So pretty much as soon as the public sort of turned against them, they
Shut down.
which I think also makes sense.
Right.
Well, sure.
I mean, I wouldn't
Right.
want to leave my house if the whole world because because this garnered national attention in the age of the internet.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it's yeah.
Any
You can't
And
get
it's only
away
been
from it.
you can't get away from it, and
Yeah.
and it's been 2 years, so it hasn't been very long
Mm-mm.
that this has
Interesting.
happened. So she did submit to like polygraph tests and stuff like that, but I mean, we all know those can be pretty.
Inconclusive.
Right.
Too.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. You can be so nervous and so sick about things that
And I
you're
mean,
not going to get a positive.
If she was
yeah.
if she was submitted to the polygraph right after,
The
like
event,
right,
sure.
her stress level might
Right.
stay consistent the
Right.
whole time. Even just talking about it, like, could trigger stress because
Absolutely.
she could have PTSD from the event.
Right. And she may have some other psychological issues going on that even if it didn't happen the way it was told
Right.
in her head,
If that's how she perceived it.
correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, well,
So-
that's my last, I guess, point to this.
Oh, sorry.
Is no, you're actually sorry. There's 2. One is that if this did happen to her, it was probably very traumatic, and I feel like a lot of people probably know, even from their own experiences, that when something traumatic happens to you, it can be years later that
Yeah.
you finally remember what
Yeah.
really happened. So that is, of course, an option. It does seem unlikely because of her history for seeking attention and the fact that right before this happened, one of her good friends who was very similar to her, looked a lot like her, they grew up, they'd known each other for years, disappeared
Oh,
and got her friend was never found. But the attention that it garnered,
Yeah.
and she has in the past created
That's-
false police reports for attention.
That's
Well, and-
highly coincidental.
Yeah.
And that's basically projecting.
Yes.
Oh my
Self
god!
into
But
the
like, here's the
situation.
thing: if her friend looked like I assume probably lived in the same area.
Yeah.
So theoretically, it's possible that this was the same people,
Sure, they took her first
Who-
and then saw her
right? And then
together with the,
right, and
yeah.
it just was coincidence that the
Exactly.
two of them knew each other if they had a type.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If the profile fit like these 2 people who
Right.
abducted Sherri Papini could have then looked at her friend first and was like, let's get this person, and then later found Sherri. And
But why would you let one go and not have the other one ever found?
but
Yeah.
and the other thing, and I mean, possibly, I'm just spitballing,
Right.
if they were held together at some point, even if they didn't realize that they were being held together, and let's say they were getting kicks from torturing these women,
Right.
and then the first one, Sherry's friend, dies, and then they go, "Oh fuck,
Yeah.
I don't actually like this,"
Because maybe.
and then let Sherri
Yes.
go, and then that's why it hasn't happened anymore.
Well, and didn't she say that she never saw their faces?
Right. There was a police sketch done of the two women, but both of them had like bandanas on their faces.
Right.
It was, I mean, it was you couldn't have picked
Yeah.
a person out of a crowd wearing that.
Number 3, we're gonna need you to step forward and put on this scarf over your face. please.
Right. Yeah.
And pretend to be a Hispanic woman. Yeah.
Right. They have only like Aryan people in the lineup, and they're like, "Well, this didn't go the way we wanted."
No. Well,
Yeah. So
interesting.
Holy shit.
that's Sherri's story, and she's sticking to it.
So I mean, so they're having because like say, I mean, I think we found out about this story together like as it was starting to happen.
Right.
So like there haven't been any
Well, so that
real
Newsweek
breaks
article,
in the case.
that Newsweek article that I got some information from was
Right.
actually from November of last year. So
Okay.
a lot more information.
So a year
yeah.
after.
So not a whole lot of information was made public when she first was found, and it was
Right.
all speculation. So about a year ago, about last November, she about a year ago from November, from I don't know what I'm trying to say. November of 2017. Dates are hard. Is when a lot of information,
why I
a
don't
lot more
date anymore.
information. Dates are hard. Yeah, it's been a lot more information. So that Newsweek article, that was very. If you want to know about it more, because I know I'm a horrible storyteller, I would read that article. It's very comprehensive.
Right.
And there were several other people spoke about it. And of course, there's a billion articles. But that was one that was like the least inflammatory, because I personally do not think that she's giving all the information, whether she's blocked it or whether she doesn't want to talk about it, whether she's lying, whatever. But a lot of those articles are very aggressive, and I think that's unfair because she was a victim of something.
Of something, whether it was of her own choosing.
Right, whether
or-
it's her own, because, and you don't, if you do something like that, you're not mentally well. So maybe,
Right.
you know, maybe
You're
she's a
not
victim of
stable.
her
Well,
own
it's,
mind.
what do you call it?
but-
Munchausen's is what that is.
Well, that's on others. You
yes.
don't
No,
put
no, no.
Munchausen on yourself.
Munchausen is on yourself. Munchausen
By
by
proxy.
Oh,
proxy.
by proxy.
is
You're
on
correct.
others,
You
yeah.
are correct.
I
You
only
are
know
correct.
that because of the film Yes Man, where Zoe Deschanel's band is called Munchausen by proxy.
You know
what,
That's where I
I-
learned the term.
I know it because
And I was like, I don't know what the fuck that means. and I
Eminem,
looked it up later.
Marshall Mather, like Eminem, the
Yeah.
rapper, and like accused his mom of that. She kept him really sick as a child.
Yeah.
And if you watch enough Forensic Files, you'll hear that pop up
Mhm.
quite a bit. So.
Man, the Forensic Files, is it on Hulu or Netflix? God, I watched so much of that last
I don't know.
week.
I think it's on Netflix.
Is it Netflix? Okay, so
It's
I've
on
I've had
regular
3
channel
weeks.
too. I mean, it's
Oh yeah, we don't
oh,
have cable.
Yeah, we don't.
yeah. You
We don't have cable.
Got it.
We're
Got it.
millennials,
Yeah,
so
you know, no big deal.
I will only watch a show if I can watch all of the episodes in one day.
Ah,
Yeah.
I need that instant gratification, and by
Pretty
instant I
much.
mean 13 hours worth
Yeah.
wow.
in a row.
Melting into the couch by the end of it.
Oh Lord.
That's crazy, though. I mean, I guess I expected there not to be any more developments in the case because
yeah.
when it was breaking, I was like, it doesn't line up, and
Oh,
I was starting to call bullshit on it.
okay. I was gonna say that reminded me also, because this got international attention.
Yeah.
There's also a good chance that if that really happened, and if 2 women really did seek her out, or possibly seek her and her friend out, that they moved.
Oh yeah.
Like for sure,
Absolutely.
because I mean it was a big deal and it got so much attention. And you, like, I don't know how to say this without sounding like a weirdo, but to pull off something like that, you have to be intelligent,
Yeah.
like
Oh, yeah.
in terms of making, like, planning. So
Right.
obviously they're not like emotionally intelligent if you can fucking torture another person, but
Some of the craziest people I know are very intelligent.
yes,
So.
yeah, yeah.
Some of beautiful
Unfortunately.
mind shit.
Yeah, no
Yeah.
kidding. No
Yeah.
kidding. Which, I mean, that does. I have my doubts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I have my
I mean, there's definitely inconsistencies, but I was hoping that there was like
No,
some
I'm sorry.
big new surprising twist. But I guess I kind of knew that there.
And it could have started out in one way for her to just garner some attention because she wasn't getting what she needed, and maybe it went wrong.
Right.
Right. Well,
And
and
so there's so many.
I remember
so
reading
many
something
ifs.
on like
Yes,
one of
yeah.
like the Reddit like unsolved mysteries or Reddit Bureau of Investigation or something like that, where like basically the internet like pretends they're detectives and then pretends to solve crimes.
Do
And
they call
sometimes
that?
they actually
Do
solve
they
them.
call them armchair detectives? Is that what that is?
Yeah, stuff like that. Armchair
Yeah,
detectives.
I heard.
It's-
What was his name? That like talks. Shoot. I forget. I'm so sorry. I forget what his name is. But he talked to the women on My Favorite Murder about armchair detectives and about how much they.
Are you talking about
About
during
how
the
they
Golden State
solve-
Killer?
yeah.
They can
Paul
help or
Holes?
hinder.
No, I think I was
They can
talking
help
about
or hinder, and
Billy
there are a lot of
Jensen,
things
I
that
think
have
his
been
name
solved
is. Oh,
by
yeah, yeah.
armchair detectives.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
but a lot of, and then well, because both of the women on that show are very much like, if you're good at picking up patterns and stuff like that, for sure do that.
Right.
But there are, when was this? Maybe I don't know. Maybe about a year ago, the two of them were talking about like some kind of organization where people like voluntarily come in and look at this stuff, or not come in, do it from their homes. You know what I
Sure.
mean? But look at evidence, and then people who are just, they're not detectives and they don't do this,
Right.
but maybe
like,
they're interested in,
consultative.
maybe they're
Yeah.
interested in true crime, or maybe they're just good
It's
at picking
another
out
eye. Yeah.
patterns. Yeah. That sort of thing.
I wish you hadn't told me this because now I might have to look it up.
Right.
You know what?
They're
Christian and I tried to
real-life
do
Sherlock
that.
Holmes.
Yeah, Christian and I tried to do that hunt a killer thing. Have you heard of that?
No.
Oh, it's very.
Yeah.
The premise is so interesting, but maybe we're just bad at it. But they send you.
The problem was they send you one a month,
Yeah, and then
and
I
like
got
you
bored.
have to do like a whole year in order
Yeah.
to get the whole picture.
Yeah, but they
Like-
send you clues and evidence, but also there's a whole online community that you do it with.
Oh, my Lord.
If you can commit the time, I think it would be super cool and
It
super
would be
interesting.
fun. It would be
But
really fun.
I got bored with it very quickly because you like have to wait for the next one, and then I like forgot what you know what I mean? And they're like, take notes, and so we took the dumbest notes.
If
like
you're
I
like
didn't.
me, you're thinking ahead anyway. I
Yeah.
probably had
Right.
this clue by the time they sent it to me. So
Right.
this is how my mind works.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, so it wasn't for me, but a lot of people do love it and
Mhm.
have
Yeah.
done it since it came out.
That's
It's very interesting, and it's not super expensive either.
No.
I don't remember how much it is for a
I
box,
think it
but
was
then
$30.
yeah, but it's you know what? I think we still have the one that we got if you're
That's
interested in looking at it.
no. Because I have enough on my
You'll
plate
dive
now.
down
Thank
a
you.
rabbit hole with it.
Give me a couple years and maybe
Uh,
one more chapter.
So, well, guys, thank you for being on the show today
Thank you
and
for
sharing
having me.
the
You
the
are
weird
so
stories.
welcome.
It was a
Yeah.
lot of fun.
well,
Hope I
good.
didn't
I'm
creep
glad.
you out too much.
No, I fucking Disappearances with a twist of aliens was
Yeah.
great.
I love aliens.
Hell yeah.
Ancient Aliens Friday night, every Friday night.
I'm not saying it's aliens,
No, I know.
but it's aliens.
Well, the first one, I think, when he said he was born, he was taken to space.
Right.
And
Yeah.
yeah.
For sure.
He came from space and was planted in his mother's womb. Yeah.
Well, so listeners, make sure you're checking us out on the internet. We are on Instagram and Twitter at AntiFictionCast. You can email us any of your comments, questions, suggestions at antifictioncast@gmail.com. And we'll see you next week for our long-awaited serial killers episode. Yes. I had mentioned the other day on one of the previous podcasts that I was going to wait 8 weeks, and it turns out I accidentally waited 9. So my bad, guys. It's yeah.
But I'm sure it will be well worth the
Oh,
wait.
It's gonna be
maybe.
good.
Who knows? we
I
haven't
know.
recorded it yet, so I don't know.
I
I might
know.
have to come and just be here to
Right.
go, oh my God, I know that story.
Well, so thanks for checking us out, and then we'll see you next week.
Goodbye.